last time I recorded the note. I recorded the quotes like on the same paper, and then I ran out of space to write all my notes because I started writing like good notes down, and I was like, shit, now I don't have any place to write for this goddamn synopsis.
Damn it.
All right. That's enough bullshit. All right.
Oh, there's no place like home for the holidays, and no matter how far away you roam, if you pine for the sunshine of a friendly gaze, for the holidays you can.
Welcome back to Horror for the Holidays, a Christmas horror movie podcast. I'm Jay Logsden.
I'm still Jeff Searcy.
How you been since we last talked on, I guess for our listeners, Christmas in July?
Terrible, as usual.
It's been hot here in Iowa. It's been a really hot couple days. I've been busy moving, so we've got a new kind of setup going on here. If you go on our Twitter page, you can see I posted some of the art that accompanies our new studio. I got some pictures and posters framed and hung up, and then otherwise just sound might be a little different. We're still kind of working on stuff, but
yes, studio is under construction.
Yeah, but it's coming along, and we've got a nice little space here. So that's all that's been going on with me is, close to 100-degree heat some days and moving stuff. So
Oh yeah, I love feeling like I'm baking outside. It's
yeah.
great.
So today's movie, the movie we watched for this episode, is the 2012 WWE film release Barricade, starring Eric McCormack, better known as Will from Will and Grace. So let's get into our pre-minutia and deck the halls, shall we?
Christ.
There was a lot of movie in this movie.
There was a lot of something in this movie.
So as I mentioned earlier, Will from Will and Grace, Eric McCormack, plays our main character Terrence Shade in this film. He's probably the biggest name, although you spotted one other person.
Oh yes. Well, if anyone's a fan of the Battlestar Galactica reboot, you'll notice the crazy old man who is inexplicably credited as the sheriff, played by Donald Lee Rhodes, is also Doc Cottle on the Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Other than that, I had the director, Andrew Curie, I would assume it's Curie, was also the writer-director of the zombie movie Fido. I've not seen that, but I know the box art. It's like a zombie wearing like a dog collar. Yeah,
it looked familiar, but yeah, I've never seen it, and I've never heard his name before we read the credits for this.
And then the one other, as I mentioned more towards the top, this was a WWE release back in 2012. I was maybe not consistent, but I was fairly consistent watcher of WWE, of Monday Night Raw back at the time. And when this film first popped up, I had no recollection of it. When we watched it, as we were watching it, it kind of came back to me. I remember them advertise. I was like, okay, this looks a little familiar.
Yeah, the only thing I remember is I know I've seen the poster before with him looking through like the frosted window.
And this is the first WWE film release to not feature a single pro wrestler,
which turned out to be a good choice.
Yeah, I don't know who you would have put in this. Would you have had like The Miz show up and get his ass kicked by Eric McCormack at some point? I don't know.
No, I would have cast the Big Show.
Everyone would have loved to see The Miz just get the piss beaten out of him one more time. And then the one other thing I thought, and we're going to probably actually get back to this later on in our discussion, but it was shot in Manning Park, British Columbia, and man, that looked beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, Canada looks great. I mean, it would look better without all the Canadians, but, there's trade-offs to every place.
Except if we have any Canadian listeners. They're great. All right, so let's. If you don't have anything else, let's get into our synopsis.
I think we're good to go.
All right, this might break us if this synopsis doesn't make a lot of sense. This movie, what the hell? This movie relies on the unreliable narrator trope in some ways. It jumps around a lot. It gets really confusing, and it kind of makes sense at the end. Like it kind of gets pieced together, but. Yeah, let's just go from there, and we can talk about that later.
If you're into foreign films, this movie feels very French.
So we start off with like an overhead shot of like a sunny coastal town. Eric McCormick's character Terrence Shade is talking to his wife Leah about the cabin she spent Christmas at as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to point this out because it's never going to come up again. They had a drone for this production.
And they argue a little bit about raising their kids. It's kind of like Eric McCormick says something along the lines of, "I make the money, you raise the kids," or something like that. I'm not good at raising kids.
He also lets slip that he's swamped with patients, so he's some kind of doctor.
Yep. And so it fades to black. I think we get the Barricade logo, and it says 1 year later. And then we get another overhead shot of like snow-covered mountains. It felt very Shining-esque. There was the music playing in the background.
Yes, the lead-up shots with the drone definitely evoke that same kind of feeling of them driving up to the Overlook Hotel.
Snow-covered mountains. Like, the score is nowhere near as good. It's not that one long shot. It's a bunch of different kind of overhead shots, but very, very evocative of The Shining.
Either the director of photography or the director, or maybe both, have seen The Shining.
Yeah, and we get into the interior of the car. And Terrence, Eric McCormick's character, looks a lot more haggard, a lot more grizzled. And his son and his daughter, Cynthia and Jake, they are in the SUV, and there's no wife anywhere to be seen.
They're in their usual dead-eyed state. You'll see them in for the rest of the movie.
They pull up to a closed-down gas station convenience store. Terrence knocks on the door for a bit, trying to get someone to come. I think the daughter says something like, "Don't leave me here, it's creepy." And I think Eric McCormick says, like, "Don't worry about it, creepy's good," or something like that.
I think the son's like, "Duh, it's cool."
Yeah, and he's like, "It could be creepy and cool." And he goes up and he knocks on the door, and he knocks for a bit, and then out pops Mr. Howes, Sheriff Howes, and he, "What do you want?" Like, that's the first thing he says, and it's like a jump scare.
Yeah.
Like,
he says it like incredibly hostily, and then he like instantly changes, like, "Oh, hey."
And he's like, you're Leah's husband. Oh, I'm awfully sorry about what happened to her." So we clearly know something occurred since between 1 year ago and now.
The family's never been the same since the incident.
Yep. And while he's talking, I think the kids are picking out some supplies. He's telling Terrence about the cabin, and Mr. Howes keeps coughing a bit, has a really bad cough, and it is laid out. This is the only instance, I think, in the entire film. At one point he says something like, "Oh, I am the sheriff as well."
Yeah, it's like one casual throwaway line which you would miss because I don't even think the camera's pointing at him when he says it. I think he's pointing at the kids.
And it's so weird because at the end of the movie when the credits roll, he's credited as Sheriff Howes, and I'm like, when did they call him sheriff?
You never see this man doing anything police related.
And one last thing, while they're in the convenience store, Cynthia, like the Mr. Howes comments on Cynthia's stuffed bunny rabbit, and she named it Jack the Ripper. That serves no real purpose other than to come back later in the film for something absolutely wild, because that's what this whole movie is. It's
going to be big. I'll just say that.
They keep driving. Terrence and Cynthia talk about how, she's still broken up about their mother, about her mother dying, and asks Terrence about how come you don't keep any pictures of mom or something like that. They're kind of talking, and then something slams into the windshield.
Yeah.
Terrence stumbles out, into the snow, following like a bloody path.
Yeah, clearly he hit something.
And he follows it, gets startled by an owl. It feels like he walks for like a minute, 2 minutes straight.
He's like 5 minutes from the road easily.
But then, next time we see, he's right next to the van still. But he gets startled by an owl, and then there's an injured wolf. The blood trail leads to this injured wolf. He's about ready to bash its brain in. Second movie in a row where someone has or attempted to bash someone's brain in with a rock. And then he has like a weird flashback moment where we see Leah's feet like kicking on the floor.
Like she's twitching.
Cynthia is like, Dad, is everything okay? And he's like, oh, it was just a squirrel.
Yeah, I don't understand why he lied.
It serves no... Yeah, he could have just been like, I couldn't find... He could have been like, I couldn't find it, or he could have been like, yeah, it must have been a dog or something, or it must have been a deer.
Why a squirrel? No one will ever know. But...
And a squirrel would not do that much damage to the windshield.
Exactly. It's like something very large clearly cracked into their windshield.
They get into the cabin, and there is Terrence kind of disappears into the darkness for a second, and then he's like, oh, hold on, kids, and he's like, I paid Mr. House to come up early. And he plugs in some Christmas lights, and there's it's a nice. He brought some presents up for the kids.
Got a nice Christmas tree and all that.
It looks really nice. There's lights on the outside of the cabin. Mm-hmm. There's a really nice Christmas tree on the inside of the cabin.
They mention that it's Christmas a lot too.
Yep, at least early on. They explore the house a bit. There's like a moment where a door opens for a second, but there's nothing there.
Yeah. Oh, I want to talk. When they first walk in the door, there's like a taxidermied bobcat climbing up the wall, and the son's like, oh, awesome. And the daughter's like, do you think it's real, Daddy? And he's like, oh, no, I'm sure it's not real. And then literally standing right next to her, bends down to the son. He's like, it's totally real.
That's right. They explore the house. They go to the fridge. Is on the fritz. That serves no purpose other than that they need to go down to the basement over and over and over again. The kids have stuff to eat, and then we learn that the kids don't like mac and cheese. Eric McCormick says you must be the only kids on planet Earth who don't like mac and cheese,
which disgusted me, frankly. But
and he's like, you know what? Let's all have a sleepover, a slumber party in the living room. Mm-hmm. They all kind of fall asleep in the living room. And Eric McCormick goes up to takes a pill. I don't remember the name of the medicine. It really isn't that important. And takes it with a glass of whiskey.
Yeah, like you should always take all prescription medications with a whiskey chaser.
And he and we see for the first time that Eric's starting to develop a cough. Mm-hmm. Eric, and then we see some flashbacks of Terrence helping Leah with the kids, put the kids down for bed. Mm-hmm. Then he kind of like has like a moment, and he looks out the window and he sees like the ghostly face of his wife staring through the window at him, and she puts her hand up on the window pane, and he kind of runs out to look at her, and he runs outside, and and the door slams behind him. And he's standing out there, and then he wakes up back in the living room.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool shot when he sees her through the window, because she's kind of silhouetted in the frost, and when she puts her hand up on the window, it kind of melts the frost and cracks it a little bit. I thought it was pretty well done.
No, it looks really cool. Sadly, I think this is one of only 2 times we see that. Mm-hmm, see that monster special effects.
Which I'll tell you now. We're going to get into some of the special effects later, and they never describe how that effect was done.
And he wakes up. The kids are like, "Well, we didn't want to wait. We tried waking you up." So clearly he, mixing his medication with alcohol really passed him out. But he wakes up. He sees the handprint still on the window. Mm. And he's like, you know what? Let's go outside. Let's go build a snowman. So it's just starting to snow.
Yeah, he seems to think that it would be morning, but they're implying that it's like late afternoon already.
Yep. He goes and checks his cell phone, sees that he has no service. He goes upstairs. Cynthia thinks she hears something in the attic. Ryan then thinks he sees something in the trees, and Terrence assures him by saying it's just shadows in the trees. Tree shadows.
Yeah, he's like, what's wrong with you kids? Seeing things everywhere. It's like, I don't know. I guess that's what most people do, right? With eyes.
Jake goes... So they go out, they have their snowball fight, and then Jake goes missing.
Yeah, and you can see at this, when they're out having their snowball fight, that the kids are starting to get sick as well.
Yep, because Jake has a bit of a cough now too. They follow him to like a tool shed. They see the tool shed door slamming shut.
They can't open it.
Yeah, they struggle to open it at first. They finally get in, and while they're inside, Cynthia thinks she sees something outside of the tool shed, like more movement. They all agree to go into town to see a doctor because everyone's kind of developing a cough. Terrence has another flashback while the kids like run upstairs to go to the bathroom. Suddenly he finds the car buried in snow.
Yeah, like since he must have passed out for quite a bit of time.
He's able to dig out at least the driver's side door. The car is still completely buried in snow. There's no way he'd be able to move it.
Yeah, and he's totally shocked when it won't move.
Yeah, there's a weird moment when he gets in the car, the broken glass in the windshield, the cracks reappear. I don't know if they forgot that they were there, or once again it may come into play later.
Or maybe they shot that scene earlier or something like that.
And he starts banging his hands on the steering wheel, and we get another flashback to him hitting his hands on someone or something. The kids are he comes to, he sees the kids staring at him. They all run into the house and they start locking all the doors and windows.
And the kids are looking visibly ill by this point.
Yeah, and Terrence says something to the kids after they've boarded everything up. Oh, let's get lunch, and Cynthia's like, Daddy, it's time for supper time. And Terrence sees a figure standing outside by the trees. They find that their bathroom has been ransacked.
Yeah, I think he blames the son first, and then Cynthia's like, no, he's too OCD. He would have cleaned everything up.
Yep. So we still really have no clue what's going on. Terrence is getting more and more erratic in his behavior. He hears a banging on the front door, takes like a piece of a lamp.
Oh, yeah, I want to highlight that quote really quick. Cynthia's like, it's just a lamp, Dad. Are you sure you should be doing this? And he's like, it's a good lamp. Yeah, it's heavy.
And he's like smacking it in his hand like
he's got a club there.
Yeah. And he goes down to the front door and he doesn't open it because the banging kind of continues. And then Mr. Howes opens the door and I came to check on you. I hadn't heard anything from you for a few days, and then he just goes flying back out to the front door.
Like he was yanked by a giant hand, basically.
Yep, and his screaming echoes through the whole house. The power cuts, they have to head down to the basement. Terrence and the kids have to head down to the basement. He's able to turn the power back on. They see a bunch of rats. Cynthia runs out scared because apparently she's afraid of rats.
Yeah. Don't worry, honey, the rats will stay in the basement. They have plenty of food down there.
Yep. They all go out to the tool shed to get some supplies to barricade the house. TM. Terrence comments on a missing shovel at one point. He's like, there was a shovel there.
Yeah.
Which is another weird thing, but it makes more sense later on.
Yeah, I mean, marginally more sense.
They see more movement outside. There's more banging outside, and Terrence thinks he sees Leah's eyes. We kind of see the same ghastly eyes staring at them.
Oh, let's not forget the oversized monster-proof nails that they found in the basement.
Yeah, they call them the monster nails. Terrence and the kids have a conversation over dinner. We'll get to what the big conversation is about, I'm sure, later. Jeff, I'm pretty sure, already has that whole thing highlighted for our Christmas Carol section.
Yes, I do.
Terrence has another flashback, and we hear him talking about a patient of his unable to get over the death of her husband, and recommends some medication to her. I guess if you pay attention, it's the same medication he's taking.
Yeah. Oh, and the kids run in, and they're super annoying. He's like,
honey, you deal with the kids. I've got to do this. And so she goes and helps them with whatever. He wakes up. The kids are gone. He goes down to... He kind of hears them, but he can't see them. He goes down to the kitchen, and Cynthia's like sitting in the kitchen eating mac and cheese. The kitchen looks all disgusting,
which is instantly wrong because she hates mac and cheese.
As we know, I think he really reiterates, what's wrong, honey? You hate mac and cheese.
She also hates walking, apparently, but we'll get to that later.
Right. And he's like, why won't you look at me? Why won't you look at me? And then it's like a ghastly version of her face, and she's like, stop it, Daddy, you're hurting me.
Yeah, and she does, when he asks her why she won't look at him, she does say, because I don't want to scare you.
Yep. And then he hears he kind of runs out of there. He hears Jake screaming, runs upstairs and sees Jake's hands getting pulled into the attic, follows them up there, gets startled by something. Once again, we can't tell what it is.
It's definitely something. It could be a rat for all we know.
And then he falls back through the floorboards down to the upper floor below.
He falls like a good 6-7 feet, so probably cracked his leg.
Yeah, he's looking for the kids, still can't find them, sees a figure with his kids outside going back into the tool shed.
Yeah, it almost looks like him too, like the same kind of hair from the back.
Yep. So he leaves, chases after them, doesn't see them in the tool shed, finds a grave marker and digs it out and finds Jack the Ripper buried in there, but can't find the kids. He goes back inside the cabin, finds the kids sicker than they've been previously. Decides to take Sheriff Howe's truck. He realizes, we have Sheriff Howe's keys. Decides to take Sheriff Howe's truck, load up the kids, and go back to town to get help.
Right. What also makes you wonder, because I wondered at the time, it's like he went flying out into the middle of nowhere. He never gave you his keys.
Yep. Like, I assume he left them in the door when he unlocked the door. He gets in. He can't drive in snow. And crashes the truck almost immediately.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to watch.
They go back to the house. He seems to think the kids are now dead. And it has another flashback of him and Leah. I think it's kind of a reiteration of that opening scene. The son, Ryan, calls for some water.
Yeah.
Mommy, I need some water. Oh, hold on, honey. I'll be right there. She runs down. She goes downstairs to get him some water. We hear some glass breaking. Mm-hmm. Terrence goes down to check on her. Oh, I'm just a klutz. And she stands up.
The funniest moment in cinema history is about to happen.
She stands up. And before it even happens, you see Terrence go like, no! And she slips, falls backwards, cracks her head on the countertop. Pretty much implies that like she dies instantly.
Yeah, she like cracked her neck and she kind of just lays there. I think she says a few more words to him and then basically just dies.
And so now we know why Leah died. If you're paying attention, it turns out it's probably all the same day. We're just reliving that one day in his memories.
Yeah, because you see her in the same outfit through the entire thing.
Yep, she's wearing the same outfit in all of the flashbacks. Terrence sees Jake fall backwards. I think I called him Ryan earlier. I think that's the actor's name. Terrence sees Jake fall backwards and disappear into a bathtub. He reaches in to grab him, and then a hand reaches up and starts pulling him back into the tub.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of one of the scenes in The Grudge.
He then goes up to the attic for whatever reason and finds Mr. House bound and gagged up in the attic.
Yeah.
He kind of takes the gag out of his mouth.
And he's like, please, you gotta let me go.
Yeah, he's like, I came up to check on you after the storm ended. Yeah. And Terrence is like, what do you mean the storm ended? It's still going on. And then suddenly all the light changes. It's bright and sunny out.
Yeah.
And he like has this lucid moment. He goes downstairs, finds the kids. Turns out the kids are still alive.
Yeah, their fevers are broken. They seem to be okay.
Everything kind of starts to make sense to him again. We see that at one point when the kids got sick, because I think he accuses Mr. House of getting everybody sick.
Yeah.
And we see one scene where like he tried to give Jake an ice bath. So that's why Jake disappeared into the bathtub.
Yeah.
We see that Cynthia asked Terrence to bury Jack the Ripper because Jack the Ripper was sick too.
Yes.
And on the headstone it says, "Here lies Jack the Ripper. He was a good bunny." We see the scene where Mr. House tried to come in and Terrence attacks him.
Yeah, he kind of throws him back out into the snow and then drags him upstairs.
Drags him up into the attic, and that would make sense. The monster noises we heard coming from the attic that the kids kept hearing were like a howling and a coughing and a screaming, and we hear that noise, and it turns out, oh, that's who it was the whole time.
Yeah.
Cynthia and Jake wake up. They say they're okay. 2 police officers burst in. They tell they find Mr. House, tell him they'll lock Terrence up. Don't worry about it. We see Terrence and the kids get into an ambulance, and then there's a bunch of weird, like, horror movie Dutch tilt angles.
Yeah.
And we see, like, the window the shade in the window part, or the curtain in the window part, watching the ambulance that Jake gets into leave. And that's the end of the movie.
As if a ghost is watching him leave.
Yeah, as if there was a ghost the whole time.
Also, a quick note, when he gets in the ambulance, it looks like only he is in the ambulance.
Yeah, well, and it just, like I said, if this movie makes no sense to you, if what we just described makes little to no sense to you, it made little to no sense to us.
We almost died watching this for you.
It was genuinely awful.
I was considering suing Jay and this podcast for my pain and suffering.
So, well, and trust me, I'm not worth that much. But let's get into our minutia. Our first thing, Christmas carols. Any lines of dialogue that you found interesting?
Just let me break out my notepad here for this extensive list of dialogue.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'll go first. I have one where it turns out it's built like a brick you-know-what house. Shit house? That's why I said you-know-what.
Why do you always do that? Because it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Haha, we're so in love. I just want to smack both of them. All right, I've got my first one.
All right.
You know, Dad, you broke the hammer trying to fix the toaster. What?
At one point, Jake says to Terrence, "When I've grown up, can I say bad stuff?" And, sure, buddy.
Yeah. When they're first walking into... I want to just highlight this real quick. They call this place a cabin, and it's like a mansion.
On the exterior, it's a mansion. On the interior, it's like a cabin.
Yeah. But he says, "Did you bring your tuxedo? A gentleman always dresses for dinner."
Did you bring your tuxedo, Jeff? A gentleman always dresses for podcast.
I did not.
The one other one I had, we already mentioned it. Here Lies Jack the Ripper. He was a good bunny.
Yes. One of the ones that stuck out to me was the daughter, Cynthia, says, "Mom said you were good with your brain, but not your hands." And I was like, ouch, big L, dude.
He just got ratioed by his daughter.
When this is Terrence talking to Cynthia, he's like, "Since when do you want to walk? You hate to walk." This is when I was having a psychotic break during the movie, and I put, "I need a minute to just steady my thoughts. What the fuck is this movie?" That's at the middle of the notes. He's running around the house boarding things up. I mean, he seems to be going at like a regular, walking pace, not that hurried. And then he sits down completely out of breath, and he's like, "I need a minute to catch my breath. I haven't exercised this much in a long time." Walking around the house. Oh yeah, we mentioned earlier, it's a good lamp, it's heavy. That was a good one. The rat staying down in the basement. Yeah. Because there's plenty of food down there.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna get into this now. This is the crowning achievement of this entire movie.
This is absolutely buck wild. We watched this 2 or 3 times to make sure we got the full quote.
They're sitting there they're trying to, because they think there's this storm raging outside, and they're all sick, and they're afraid of this monster. And so they ask their dad, what's going to happen? How are we going to get out of this? And he's like, the Mounties are going to ride in, because this is set in Canada, obviously, and these are all Canadian actors. The Mounties are going to ride in and rescue us, and they're going to find out that the whole thing was just kids playing pranks, and they're going to get spanked, and they're going to have no dinner for a week. No, 2 weeks, and we'll make them eat sand. And then, to cap this all off, you know what they call sand for dessert?
Desert.
Jesus Christ. It was the high point of the movie for me. Yeah, we had to rewind it like 3 times to make sure we weren't like having a collective hallucination.
It was we were having the same issues that Terrence was having the whole movie.
Yes,
just in that one scene. Other than that, I think we truly cannot top that moment for Christmas carols.
No.
So let's get into Christmas sweater outfits, sartorial decisions. Anything catch your eye?
Outfits were pretty. I mean, they made the old man / sheriff for some reason look pretty good, as far as like, a crazy old disheveled old man. He looked pretty good, convincing in the part. I mean, the kids and Terrence, they looked average.
I agree with you on Sheriff House. There was one scene where it looked like I think he was wearing like a V-neck shirt, and there was one scene where it looked like he was wearing a winter coat and no shirt underneath, and I thought that was a wild stylistic choice at first.
It made him look like an unhinged hobo, which I appreciated.
I think about halfway through, I think I said to you, I'm like, she's wearing the same dress this whole movie, and we kind of put together like, is this all the same day?
Yeah.
And it turns out it was. He's remembering the same day. He's remembering Leah's last day alive over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, there's nothing spectacular to write home about outfit wise. It all looks pretty standard. Nothing terrible, but nothing great.
Since the villain is this intangible force / possibly ghost / who knows what, there's really no like villain costume or anything like that to speak of. Although I will say that the special effects during the quote unquote creepy shots of like Cynthia and the wife at the window and stuff do look pretty good.
Yep, those do look great. Kind of reminds me. It looks a little bit maybe like the Underworld DVD box cover mixed with like the pro wrestler now Abaddon, like kind of a cross between those two things. That's kind of what it made me think of.
Yeah. The ice effect, for anybody who's watched Game of Thrones, the ice effect on the window was kind of reminiscent of what happens like when a White Walker touches anything.
But yeah, other than that, nothing too spectacular for any of that. For Christmas spirit, how Christmassy was the movie, how Christmassy were the kills. There's no real kills to speak of.
I mean, other than that poor wolf and Jack the Ripper, of course.
Yeah, and Cynthia falling back, or Leah falling backwards and hitting her head. But I would at the beginning it felt very Christmassy. Like there's Christmas lights maybe for the first 30 minutes of the movie. It's very Christmassy. They talk about how it's Christmas. There's Christmas presents. They keep talking about it being Christmassy. There's lots of snow. And the remaining 45 minutes of the film, they drop all pretense of Christmas, which is fine.
Yeah.
And focus strictly on snow. It's not the snow's around, and then even then, most of the snow's melted by the end of the movie.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, pretty strong start, and I would say more Christmassy than our last movie, definitely.
Yeah, snow really helps. For me personally, I think snow really helps in these movies. One last thing, Manning Park, as we mentioned at the beginning, a beautiful national park, state park in Canada. There are pictures of it that look absolutely beautiful, that look absolutely 100% like a Christmas place to visit.
I can see why they definitely chose to film here.
Other than that, should we get into our final thoughts, rating?
If we must.
All right, so if this is your first time listening, we rate these movies off of one of three categories. Is it seasonally scary, ho 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 hilarious, or you will be sorry? Do you want me to go first?
Oh no, I'm going first.
All right, you go first.
Let me be absolutely, positively clear to you at this moment. You will be sorry if you watch this movie. It almost killed both of us and a dog.
It was. I completely agree. It is absolutely a you will be sorry. I thought everyone did a really good job. I thought all the actors were very talented. I think we watched some of the special effects or the extras on the DVD, and I thought a lot of the special effects were good. Everyone seemed to do a good job. There was a lot that was really, really well done. This movie did not deserve how much work went into it. If the level of work that had gone into this movie had gone into To All a Good Night, To All a Good Night would have been a great film. One of my favorite films of this genre is Mrs. Claus, aka Stirring. We'll get to it at some point. Troy Escamilla, I believe is the director's name, the writer-director of that film's name. If he had this budget, he would have made a fantastic film. And he has a very low budget for Mrs. Claus, and the movie's a lot of fun. But if he had a budget like this, his movie would have looked astounding. If he had this crew, everything behind it. But instead it goes to this crazy movie that makes zero sense.
And honestly, that's what makes it even more tragic and why I chose to rate it You'll Be Sorry. Because it's like seeing all the effort that went into this and the passion from all these people making it and the great acting in it. It's like, wasted on a story like this that makes absolutely no sense. It's sad.
And then the last, there was one other we both kind of discussed this. There might be alternate readings of this movie.
Yes, so we're adding a new category to the format.
Or at least for occasionally for some of these episodes.
Forever.
We are, what did you say you wanted to call it?
Say It Ain't Snow.
Where we review possible alternate takes, alternate endings, fan theories.
We will give our theories, which of course are objective reality and true.
So it needs to be stated. My wife looked up the medication he's on, and it says that like the side effects if you take it with liquor are like paranoia, loss of time, sleepiness, stuff like all things that he was kind of experiencing in this movie. I think aggression. Mm-hmm. Are the kids dead?
I think the kids are definitely dead.
It really does feel like at some point Eric McCormack's character killed these children.
It feels like he had some kind of psychotic break seeing the death of his wife, and he's just kind of been reliving that moment constantly in his head. And yeah, I think he killed those kids at some point.
Like, it's debatable when he did it. He could have done it at the cabin. They could have been having a nice, normal time. And then he killed them up there. He could, he could have drowned Jake in the bathtub.
I think it's heavily implied that he did drown his son, just based on how he looks in his visions of him.
Yeah, it's hard to say how Cynthia died, but there are moments where like the kids are clearly scared of their father.
Yes, and there's that moment where she breaks down in the kitchen and says that you're hurting me, And there's flashes when he's remembering his wife. He's also having flashes of him, like it looks like he's strangling someone or pushing them down. And it's like that could be the sheriff, but it also could be him doing that to Cynthia.
And I think it's implied later on that he was trying to give her like CPR or something like that. Yeah. But no, we don't know.
Which, I mean, honestly, since she wasn't in danger of dying, she just had a fever, maybe he did like crack her ribcage or something with CPR and kill her that way.
Yeah, but yeah, there is so much evidence that he killed his children.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest piece being at the end, the shot of the ambulance. It's like they walk into the ambulance together, but the shot after that, the kids are not in the ambulance with him. Yeah,
we just see him getting into the ambulance. The children got in the ambulance. We assume got in the ambulance before him, but we don't see them sitting inside the ambulance.
Yeah. Let's say the doors close on just him sitting in there, kind of smiling to himself.
Yeah. There's one more moment. We when we watched the extras on this movie, there's a line from the director who says, or maybe the writer who says, like, this movie is about being a parent and being afraid of being a parent. And I kind of get that. I kind of see where they're coming from. But this movie doesn't do enough to earn that.
It doesn't. Honestly, this movie does not have a theme.
It's a big old mess. I was bored watching this movie, and that is the worst thing a movie can be, is boring.
Yeah. No, see, I wouldn't say To All a Good Night is a good movie, but it's at least entertaining enough to keep your interest.
Yeah, that's why it got hilarious. You Will Be Sorry is almost strictly reserved for either, in my mind, at least. And our ratings will differ, I'm sure, at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, You Will Be Sorry is reserved for either boring movies or movies with, like, unreasonable gore, unreasonable violence of some kind.
In service to nothing.
Yeah. Like, that's, for me, that's what You Will Be Sorry equates to. For other people, it could mean different things. But this movie is, at the end of the day, just incredibly boring. When we were first talking about doing this podcast, I mentioned to Jeff that I find the movie Wind Chill, which is also a Christmas horror film, incredibly boring. I think I said it's the worst one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This is worse than Wind Chill.
Which shocked me, frankly. Now, and I'm less afraid to watch Wind Chill now.
Yeah. I think, and maybe it's, rose tinted glasses, but I swear I was sitting there thinking, Wind Chill's a better movie than this.
Well, I thought the worst movie that WWE Studios had ever put out was See No Evil, but then I saw this.
At least See No Evil has boobs in it. I don't know. That's a small plus.
See No Evil is at least funny bad.
Right.
This is just sad bad.
Yeah, and it has, libertarian Mayor Kane, who, murdering people. I don't know how he got elected mayor.
Kane is running for mayor? Why is he wearing a suit?
Sometimes I can't tell it's him. He's not wearing his mask the whole time.
I mean, that's very true.
But other than that, do you have any other final thoughts or?
I mean, I would recommend watching this for yourself, but honestly, just don't.
If you have a masochistic streak,
Yes,
and you want to watch this movie, be my guest. I think it's streaming or it's available for rental on Amazon Prime, but it's not worth it. Watch something better.
yeah. Don't worry though. We have a copy of it forever.
Yeah, it'll be sitting on our bookshelf or on our DVD shelf for till the end of time.
So if anybody wants to win this copy, no, we're not doing that yet.
No, not yet. Maybe I'll give away the one copy of Barricade that was left on Amazon Prime when I ordered it.
And probably
years
the
ago.
one copy left in the world, if we're being honest.
All right, and so we're moving on. We're going to move on to our final segment for now. A little segment we like to call
Garbage Day! Huh? No!
All right, so this is Garbage Day, the segment where we clean out our email inbox. If you have an email you'd like to submit to us, please send it to horrorfortheholidays@gmail.com.
Indeed.
We have an email today titled Garbage Day from one Tim B. It says, "Hello, Jay and Jeff. I love the first episode and look forward to more in the future. I noticed a couple errors in that first episode.
Of course you did.
Jay said in To All a Good Night was the first Killer Santa movie. While technically true, the first movie with a Killer Santa in it was 1972's Tales from the Crypt."
Oh, well, at least you're technically correct.
Yep, that's the best kind of correct. And then also Jeff implied that Jennifer Runyon met Roger Corman and his nephew on the set of this movie, but I believe she met them on the set of Carnosaurus.
Oh, did I imply that? I implied that she got funding. I don't know.
Who knows? Lastly, when are you going to do The Nightmare Before Christmas? That's the best Christmas horror film. Sincerely, Tim B.
What is he talking about?
I don't know. We've got a list of over 200 movies. I'm scrolling through the list right now.
I'll just search it.
Yeah.
We're not cavemen.
I don't see a movie on this list called The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I mean, I don't know what kind of hack would use a title like that for a movie anyway.
Is he confusing The Nightmare Before Christmas with A Nightmare on Elm Street? Just because Freddy wears a Christmas sweater does not make the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise a Christmas horror movie.
Yeah. Tim B., we have no idea what you're talking about, but thank you for your letter.
Thanks for writing in, Tim. And once again, if you would like to write in, you can send us an email at horrorfortheholidays@gmail.com.
Yes, send us your unsolicited advice and corrections, please.
We're not going to be like other podcasts and tell you to tweet random Twitter accounts. You can send us your any corrections you would like. We'll see if we read them out.
I will skim them all.
If you would like to get in touch with us other ways, you can follow us on TikTok and Twitter at horrorforholidays@gmail.com or just at horrorforholidays. Horror, the number 4 holidays.
Yes, subscribe to our YouTube channel for audio backups of all these episodes. Horror for the Holidays.
And make sure you rate, review, subscribe on whatever your podcatcher of choice is.
Give us feedback.
Yeah, please give us 5 stars. And don't be too harsh. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Goodbye.
Bye.